Yep.
Yes.
Uno. One, two. Oh, we're recording. All right, let's go.
All right. So, Mrs. Irwin, I'm apologizing. I was the host. We were about 12 minutes in, and it just stopped and then said, I have no free space. So, don't know what that is. I will go to the IT guy today, but we're going to turn in 2 videos. We were talking about the trauma that we have been actually dealing with at my school. Lost a student last Monday, and just we were going over it like what my first hour, and the continuation was going over of like I guess self-healing and stuff. And what I was doing in the classroom is just like allowing the students, if they wanted to work, and if they didn't want to do anything, they could have just stayed inside the classroom while we were out in the shop. And I was super proud of my kids because they wanted to get their mind off of it. They wanted to take the next step in healing. So that's what I was going off of on that. I think having the closure, in this funeral this last Saturday, this past weekend, I think that's the next step of closure and saying goodbye to their friend. And just like what Mike said earlier, though, is like we got to show them we care about them and love them. Like I've never hugged so many students in my life the last week, and showing that I care. Like every single football player and every single wrestler that I've had, and like, just give them a big old bear hug and just let them know, hey, I'm here for you. If you guys need me, don't hesitate to call. Don't hesitate to message me, email me, whatever. And so it's just one of them deals is like, you have to let them heal and let them know that you're there, I think, as an educator. And so I'm going to pass it on to you, Becky.
Okay. All right. So I have a little bit of a different perspective being the school counselor and not in a classroom as a teacher. So I'm going to dig into a little bit of the nerdy stuff. So I see the actual repercussions with the brain stuff too with our kiddos. So when you talk about the nucleus accumbens and the pleasure and reward systems and like the prefrontal cortex for decision making and executive functioning, we actually can tell when a kid is, in brainstem or they've hit that point where they've been triggered and, they can't make decisions effectively or, they're not thinking with that decision making part of their brain. And so, being in the school that I am, we do have a high number of our kids that are abused or have past abuse or are neglected. I make DCF reports weekly on our kiddos. And when it comes to incarceration, like their parents being in jail, one or both, there's a high amount of drug use with our parents. And so it's kind of odd because I approach our kids a little bit differently. They almost are their own little adults. They have to grow up very fast and see a lot of that. And so, my job is the fun part, or I shouldn't say fun, but I get to actually, have that time to talk with them. We do inform our teachers of what's going on so that they know what's going on in the classroom too. But it's one of those things that, our principal and I typically are the ones that get the phone calls, or we get that communication of, so-and-so had someone pass away, or, so-and-so had parents arrested last night. And so, it's so different, working side by side with these kids, because when they do come into my office, they do break down. They have that moment where, I do get to help them with that, just to decompress, let it out, share those emotions. And I think it's important for, someone in my position, but even as teachers, as you guys are saying, it's important that we show them, kind of like you were saying with Ross, being transparent with them and showing them, like it's okay to be emotional. It's okay to be feeling this. And you're almost in a way showing them just how much you care. Like you're in this too with them. And I just showing them, and as you were saying, Michael, about validating their feelings, that's so important. We try really hard at never, downplaying and saying, oh, you're fine, it's okay, like move on with your day. We definitely work really hard to get them back into the classroom, but that's because we don't want them to miss out on things. And we explain that to them and how, you're going through a lot. And our teachers are very good at not overworking them if they know something's going on. but making sure they've mastered the skill or what they're learning. So, for instance, I had a little girl the other day who her father tried to saw his arm off in front of her and then tried to kill himself in front of her. And she came to school the next day. He actually went through school until 10:30 when I got a phone call from mom to find this out. And she hadn't broken down. She'd said nothing. I pulled her in. I was the first person to get to talk to her about it. And she was in the middle of a math test. And so the teacher worked so well with her. The teacher knew she knew what she was working on. And then for her homework that week, just because things were so crazy at home, she had family she had to go see to figure things out. They cut back her homework by half because it was more, worried about her understanding the concept and mastering the concept versus the amount of workload. And so that's one thing I think I've seen our teachers work really hard to do is still helping them learn the concepts they need to succeed, but, meeting them where they're at too, helping them the best they can. And they don't look at the accommodation as we're babying you. We are making these accommodations so that you can still continue to be successful and overcome these adversities you're seeing. So I will pass it on to Tyler.
Yeah, Becky. So actually, while you were telling that kind of instance or that example, there's actually in 8th grade right now a student that's going fighting cancer. She just figured out she had it this summer and she's battling cancer. And I've been really impressed with our middle school teachers because they are doing the same thing with her and her homework. I mean, she cannot come to school. There's too many illnesses and she could contract something too easily. So they definitely just pinpoint what's super important, the important skills for her. And then she tries to come to school and visit sometimes. She had surgery the other day and the whole school that had kids from her class played her fight song. So she has a fight song. They play the fight song with her and the kids, they like to get updates from her and know what's going on. And I think it helps them feel inclusive in that kind of traumatic situation as well, like a support team, which I think is really important as well. I've experienced personally different traumas in my life and before, but one of the interesting things from the trauma video is the ACE score. We actually had an in-service on the ACE score where the public health department for Rollins County had done some studying and research about the ACE score. And it was really interesting to take that as teachers and discover that, hey, quite a few people had an ACE score higher than 4. So in the video, that's quite a little bit of adversity throughout their childhood and college years. And then as well as myself, I didn't have a super high score, but I had a lower, and I consider myself kind of lucky and fortunate for that. But it's good to realize that these adversities happen and that, like everybody has said before, we have to be aware. We have to help them validate their feelings and show them that it's okay. We understand what's going on. And yeah, Michael, we can pass it to you.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the article Crash Course on Trauma Informed Teaching. And one of the things that they talked about were some different strategies to really how do you work with trauma students in the classroom. And so my school, I can say that within this last year, there's been a lot of trauma. Again, starting out the school, there's been a lot of deaths. There's been a lot of sexual abuse, drug abuse within families. There's been, you name it. There's a lot of trauma that affects our students each and every day. But I think this particular year, we've had a football coach, a very loved young man football coach, pass away. And my second hour of my history class is pretty much football players, and they all loved him and knew him very well. And so that was very difficult at the beginning of the year, working through with them and talking with them about different things. But, one of the things, and Rashi spoke about this, is just being emotionally available for him. I didn't know him too well. Matter of fact, my last conversation with him was over the summer. My son is a big kid, and he was talking to my son about doing football, and it was so, watching my students come in, and like I said before, they don't necessarily have a grip on their emotions. And one, I call him Big Red. He was just kind of sitting there, and he said, "Mr. Case, I don't know what I'm feeling." I said, "Well, just take your time. It'll come to you. And if there's anything I can do to help, I can help you with those things. And so do what I can." The other thing that's just asking kids directly how they feel, what's going on with you, and there's a lot of times my students will be in doing things in class, talking, interrupting, bouncing around, jumping around, doing all this stuff. And there's our high school kids. "Hey, what's going on with you, man?"
Yeah.
"Mr. Cates, I didn't eat. I didn't sleep or eat all last night. My mother and dad were up fighting. I just didn't have anything to eat." So I literally started keeping food. I spend a pretty significant chunk of money. I can afford it now, and that's a good thing. But I spend a pretty significant chunk of money making sure that my kids have food. I bring bananas and different things like that because I know that if that's going to help them learn, and that's going to help de-escalate them in some different ways, then I want to do that. Going back to some different points, I had 2 weeks ago, I had one of my students, three of my students, their father was killed in very close to the school. And so just really, again, not just saying, again, this is at the end of the semester and we're looking at trying to get grades in, but just saying, "Hey, you know what? Let's modify your testing. Let's figure out how we can make sure that I can give you accommodations. And if you need to go to the library, study in the library, yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about whatever ways that we can do." It also, means calling and talking with the parents. And I don't mean to give so many different things. It sounds like my school is just a war zone. It's not. But it's a lot of things going on, and students with a lot of trauma and dealing with a lot of things. One of my students was dealing with something at the beginning of the year. His best friend was killed, and his other best friend was the one that killed him, and he was in the car with him. And this was a kid that was being disruptive in my class, and then kind of going back and not judging him or but asking that question, why is this going on with this student? And so one of the things that I began to do, and because I will admit, I immediately just wanted the bad behavior to stop. So that passing that judgment, saying, "Hey, you're being disruptive in my classroom, stop, because you're affecting other kids' learning." But one of the things I realized is that, talking with his mother, she explained to me that this is what's really going on with him, and this is how we can reach him, and this is one of the things that we can do. Having worked with that student over the last 2 months, and really him knowing I'm going to be there for him, totally 100 change in the student now. And he'll come to me and we'll talk about different things, and just really kind of cool to see just how just really working with students can really help, or I should say, introduce a different way of them to look at their trauma. That is pretty much all I had on that one. So I'm going to kick it back to somebody else.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything they want to add, dealing with trauma in their school, talking about safe spaces or anything? All right, Becky.
Okay. I just want to get your guys' thoughts, since this is discussion and we have different age groups we work with. One thing that stuck out to me in the video was they talk about marginalizing the issue because it affects all of us, and how some would rather be sick than ignore it. So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this because it's interesting. With our kiddos, they're young enough, they don't have a filter, they don't understand social norms, what's expected. And so they just know the experiences they have had. And so they'll just, talk about their trauma experiences out at recess with their friends because, this is what happened. This is what's going on in my life. What about you? And so, I wonder what your guys' thoughts are at, what age do people start learning to close off about those things? Or when do you think they start keeping that stuff to themselves? Because I at least know with our kids, we don't, even up to 5th grade, they're pretty open books about what's going on. So.
I think it's a learned thing. I think that they come, and I think we can all speak about this because we are all products of our parents. If you're in an environment where you are talking about and you're open about things and information is flowing, then it's going to be easy to express that emotion. And also it's gender related. I don't mean that in a negative way, but I think Ross kind of talked about this, but we internalize things. We close things off. And, I can tell you that for me, I'm pretty high on that spectrum of ACEs. And, I can definitely say that when I was closed off because my parents are closed off, we didn't talk about trauma. They didn't talk about the trauma that they experienced. And so it wasn't for me to talk about my trauma.
Yeah.
Go for it, Tyler.
Okay. I want to venture to say that kids start getting more closed off as they enter middle school and high school, because that's the time when they're trying to be and I also agree with Michael that it can be related to their parents or their relatives and then their family dynamics as well. But I think then at school with their friendship dynamics, and I mean, let's face it, they spend more time at school more often than they spend with the family sometimes when they're in middle school and high school, especially because they're doing extracurriculars and they're here and there and they're everywhere. And so it starts to kind of be that, like, you're trying to find your place in social society. You're trying to grow up and figure out what's happening. And like, oh, well, the cool kids don't seem like they have trauma that's affecting them. So I want to be like the cool kids. So I'm not going to share with Tyler or whoever what's happening because I'm kind of freaked out and I don't want, I want to be like a cool kid or be popular or have my friend group, and I don't want people to know that I'm struggling. So they put up
and a stigma thing that goes with it too. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that unfortunately, I also studied social media, branding, and journalism. So I love social media, and I think it can be a really awesome thing. But I think unfortunately, things like Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat, etc., Twitter, it allows these kids to put up a front. And they don't realize that, like, social media is definitely a connection of their personal brand, who they are in person. So they're fronting online, and then really on the inside and like in person, they're hurting. So I always just tell my kids, like, hey, you realize that this is an extension of you. This is you, even though it doesn't feel like it's you completely. And so just watch out, because anybody can see that stuff. And I've done some different National Honor Society like talks with them and stuff. And I don't know if it helps or not, but maybe it can help them sort of realize, like, hey, it's okay. If something's really wrong, I can go to somebody. There's a safe person to talk to at this school. Ross, sorry, I think I interrupted you.
No, you're good. You're good. So like what Becky said, like you're in elementary school, so I think like, the phrase "kids say the darndest things," like, that's true. Like, they're an open book. So, until about 5th, 6th grade, when they start getting dang things. My wife's a 1st grade teacher. She has 3 students with iPhones. Like iPhone 10s. What does the 1st grader need with an iPhone 10? So going to that aspect, high schoolers, I think what kills them and what I don't know if you guys have done research or not, but like teen, so 60% since the invention of Snapchat. My child's gonna have Snapchat? Absolutely not. Like, no way in HE double hockey sticks my kid's gonna have Snapchat. But guess what? We just as a district went backwards in technology. We had 1-to-1 MacBooks, and we decided to give them an iPad, a bigger cell phone. So what are they doing now? Because we take away cell phones. So like we have one of them like closet shoe organizers, and we take away all cell phones. I number my classroom in the seats, so that way I can manage my classroom better. And I literally just number it 1 through 4, then 5, 6, 7, 8, like all the way to 20. And they're supposed to put their phones in their assigned number every day. So we just gave them a bigger cell phone. So guess what? We're having so much trouble with bullying and stuff like that, because people don't realize what they say on this technology is killing them.
Yeah.
And like I have a student on Snapchat. He's like I guess an adopted son. Divorce, like mom and dad got divorced. He was my neighbor until I bought this house that I'm in right now, and then he bought a different house, or his mom bought a different house downtown. So like we're no longer neighbors, but he still works for me. Me and him still like change the oil in his vehicles, his tires. Like I helped him change the battery last week. Like I'm always like, I guess, that father figure that he needs right now. And so his mom reached out to me the other day and said I needed to talk to him. And she's like, what's one advice I could give him? And I was like, I saw his Snapchat and he's always begging for attention by like, she doesn't love me, she doesn't care about me, she this, she that. And it's a different girl like every week. And it's, dude, just delete all Snapchat, delete all Facebook, Instagram. Like, and he was also always putting like, hey, go like the Instagram, go like this, go like that. It's like, no, just, you don't have to have other people's likes to live your life.
Yeah.
Like we're fortunate enough we didn't grow up in that realm and era too much. And so Tyler's giving me the look that he did. But like we like acceptances, but we don't have to be accepted, I guess, to
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
continue life, I guess. And so that's what bugs me. That being said, though, how many of you guys have what's called unplugged, or like a 20 to 30-minute period where you guys just like do nothing in your class? Like, do you guys have that yet? All right, I'm gonna before I end this video, I'm gonna talk like 3 or 4 minutes because we're past time. Sorry, Mrs. Irwin. But I'm gonna talk right quick about this. So we started a program that is going to go through all of Kansas called Unplugged. And our Unplugged is like 20 minutes of just dewinding. Like, and I think like the time we have it at, it's at second hour. So it's at 9 o'clock to 9:20. I think it's at the wrong time of the day because kids just get started. Oh, let's go dewind. So zero technology, no cell phones, no computers, no iPad, nothing. We play games, we compete, we do like little arts and crafts. Like I'm just showing this. I mean, it's probably not school appropriate because it's wine corks, but we didn't make this there. But it's just simple stuff like this, like crafts that we make. Teach them how to write a letter. Teach them how to do interviews. So like next week, I'm going to bring in a bunch of guys from our local city and our county, and they're going to interview all my students who have to fill out an application and see like how their interviews goes. We fill out applications. So it's like 20 minutes of just like teaching them small things, and then also like teaching them how to cope with emotions and feelings and stuff like that. It's just like, I guess it's just hard because like at first, like that time, like they took away 5 minutes of class period every class period to make up this time. So it's hard being, a woodshop teacher and you're taking away my time in the shop. So now I'm losing instructional time, and you have 18 kids in there. So now my instructional time went from 45 minutes to, about 2 minutes each kid. And that's just not fair to the kids, not fair to the students. So it's tough, but I get the purpose of it. And we started when a kid from Lakin, about 1 hour north of us, he hung himself in his front yard after a girl from our town broke up with him. And so I don't know, like it did hit our school hard, but it didn't hit our school hard. And this like started last year at the very beginning of the year. And so we're trying it out still. I know about 20 schools in Southwest Kansas have started it, and I know it's reached out to like Pratt, Medicine Lodge area. So we're getting to that central Kansas. So I'm waiting for it to head north and northeast to you guys. But my little brother is Cimarron, and he has it too. So
I heard something similar. I'm going to interrupt you, Ross. I heard something similar in regards to meditation rooms where students can go and they can actually or there's periods where they would just designate where the kids can come in and they can just meditate and they can decompress and kind of really kind of rejuvenate themselves in some way. And I think that I've seen some benefits from that, and I think that is a really good way to go. We did that this summer with our kids that were for our camp, and really was helpful to kind of de-escalating some of the problems that we're having. Some of the kids would fall asleep and they'd wake up and they'd be totally calm. And it's just interesting enough, some of the kids were just not sleeping. And this was a 30-minute time for them to get a power nap.
Right.
And I remember in the Marine Corps, we used to do that all the time. We would just take these little naps and these little breaks. But we didn't know why until we started doing them. And then it was just something where we really welcome those things because they really kind of helped you kind of get all that stress out. So I think it's a beneficial thing. And I think that direction, that suicidal, the suicide that's going around and kids are dealing with, I can tell you that's something my generation didn't see a lot of. And I think what you guys are both talking about, the social media, peer pressure in that way is just overwhelming to them. And so anything we can do to continue to help them through this process is going to be beneficial. So, yeah.
Well,
sorry, Ross.
Oh, I was about to interrupt you. I was going to say, touching on the social media thing, I think, a conglomeration of everything you guys have said is that the issue with social media too is that it lets you put this perfect face on this perfect front, that then when you're around people, you feel like you have to hold that expectation.
Yes.
And we all know that each of us are human. Each of us do go through things. Each of us are touched by adversity. And so when you are constantly feeling like you have to be around your peers, and especially at, middle and high school age, peer pressure and being around your peers it's hard. And so to feel like you have to almost constantly be performing or reaching this expectation that isn't even possible, while also trying to deal with your issues, your demons, your adversity backstage where no one can see it. I think that's where we're seeing a lot of that suicidality come out, because now all of a sudden you're not even willing to open up to your friends. You're not willing to open up to anybody because you want to keep that face on and just pretend like everything's fine.
Right.
Hey, Ross, I want to ask, and this is for the group, I want to ask you guys this question because this is something that was brought up in our reading. So you just went through a really traumatic experience. And one of the things that the article talks about is how are teachers coping with the trauma that they see. And Becky, you're a counselor and you're in a high impact area. What are some of the things that you guys are doing that are kind of helping heal you so you can go back and make sure the students are taken care of? And that's one of the things I did talk about in this article, is making sure that teachers are taking care of themselves. So you want to speak to that, Ross?
Well, that's what's weird. Like, I'm weird with death, I guess. Like, I don't know why. I don't know if it's like, so I teach Catholic youth group here as well. I was baptized in Victoria when I was going to college up there and stuff. And so I wasn't like born and raised Catholic, but like, and not to get like going to the church side of things, but like, I think like I just take death differently than most. Like, I know that they're in a better place, I guess. So like, I'm not, I had my tears when I was reading that letter, and I haven't really shedded another tear afterwards. I think I am so busy. Like today after school, what did I do? I'm typing my KPTP now. So like typing my KPTP, got to submit that here in 12 days. I have a little small woodshop business. I have 2 students. After that, we're working on projects. So like I am almost like too busy to deal with it, I guess, in that retrospective. So like I heal by getting my mind off of it just because I'm so busy. And so I think that's why I cope with death differently than other people, is because my motor's running 24/7. Like, tomorrow night I have youth church, and I have a meeting in Garden City. Thursday night I have my little business. Friday I'm driving up to Colby to go officiate wrestling tournament on Saturday. So like I'm always busy. Saturday I'll have that. Sunday I'm driving to Hayes or Saturday night driving to Hayes because I have my praxis test to finish my licensure, because I think you guys just in year 1 of the T2T program?
I'm in year 2.
Year 2?
Mm-hmm.
2.
Oh, so like, when's your guys's? So like, is your KPTP, when's yours due?
I'm gonna take it in spring.
Spring. So like most of the time you're supposed to turn it in the spring. Well, my administration messed up, and so I'm taking it now, and it's like a busy time, I guess, for me to do it. It kind of, don't procrastinate, because it does suck. And so, but yeah, I think I'm like, my coping is just making myself too busy to deal with it.
What about you, Becky? Your self-care?
So it's funny you bring that up. There's actually a name for it. It's secondary traumatic stress. So any of us that are in that helping education or helping field, so education falls under that, counseling, any of those. When you're firsthand working with this kiddos and seeing it, it does affect us too. You know, sometimes we can separate ourselves from it, but there's certain situations that are just gonna, leak into you. And I think, there's many different approaches to it. There's actually books out there about this and helping prevent burnout and, handling that and finding the right way to decompress. One of the things for me, and I think, a big thing I've learned with this is it comes down to you, your personality, and what helps you unwind or relax or de-stress. So for me, my fiance and sister, we all own a CrossFit gym here in Hayes. And for me, I think exercise has always been my way of de-stressing from my day. So I go through my whole day, I actually end up leaving the school about 4:30 or so, and then I go and I get my workout in. For me, that's my moment to take all of my feelings, my frustrations about what's happened, my sadness, whatever that is, I put all of it into that. And once I've done that, that's my release of my feelings, my emotions, and I feel so much better the rest of the day. For some people, that's not how they handle it. Some people, I know my mom, she loves doing art. She is a teacher. She's been a teacher for 20 years. And for her, she's seen a lot of that firsthand stuff too. And so for her, I'll come home and she will have art all over. She's painted a bunch of stuff, and that's how I know, okay, it's been a hard day. So I think that it doesn't even have to be something huge. It doesn't have to be something that is very expensive or you have to go out of your way. It's just whatever I think works for you to be able to calm down and realize, we all have to realize that, the bigger picture of, if I were to let this one situation, and there are always those hard ones, but if I were to let this one situation get me down, I'm not going to be able to be there for those other kids that are going to need me the next day. And so just realizing you do have to take care of yourself and make yourself a priority so that you can be a tool the next day for the kids that are going to need you then.
Right.
Yeah. Agreed.
Thank you.
Don't have anything else? All right. Well, I think we should close with this. Thank you, Mrs. Irwin. We're sorry that this video is probably about 40 minutes long, maybe a little bit longer, because my time says 45 minutes. And also, we're sorry that it's going to be 2 recordings, but I guess technology beat us today, but we're going to conquer later. So, all right. Well, nice meeting you guys.
Yeah, appreciate the discussion, guys.
Don't forget to put our names in the document when we send it.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Guys, have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.